Okay, this is going to be a video on the inverse trig function. The main thing is you want to have your triangles already drawn out for you. Also, you have your polar graph, okay? What we're doing in inverse trig, if you remember the earlier part in this unit, what this means is find the angle. And what we're going to do is we're going to use radians only. Okay, now the only issues you run into is if you get a negative ratio. And if you get a negative ratio, if you're going to use quadrant 2 for the cosine one, or quadrant 4 for tangent and sine. Now, when you're using quadrant 4, okay, all right, so if you're using quadrant 2, a couple things. That's going to be these. Let me use the 6 first. It's going to be 5 pi over 6, okay, 3 pi over 4, and 2 pi over 3. Okay, if you're using the quadrant 4 angles, okay, you can use, and then you're also using pi in there. We'll get into that in a second, okay, as well. All right, for quadrant 4, you're using, you can use 11 pi over 6, or 7 pi over 4, or 5 pi over 3, or 3 pi over 2, okay? If you want, you can always just do the negative versions. Okay, so you can use those if you want, okay? So either or, okay? So here's the concept. I'm going to go through some basics. The idea is, in the cosine triangles, where is the O square root of 3 and the H2? Okay, well that is in the pi over 3 triangle. If I look at the pi over 3 triangle, you'll see if you found the sine, O over H, it would be that. Okay, the cosine one, where is the A square root of 2 and the H2? That's going to be the pi over 4 triangle. Okay, now this next one, someone say, Mr. Evans, if I do O over A, okay, I don't see an A of square root of 3. All right, so the deal is here, when we do this, this is 1 and square root of 3. Okay, that's the pi over 6 triangle. And if I found the tangent, that would turn into square root of 3 over 3. So you got to think, all right, from that, if I rationalize that, what would I get? Okay, so this one is the O over H. All right, where is O1 and the H2? That's going to be the pi over 6 triangle. Okay, this one, where is the A square root of 3 and the H2? This is also the pi over 6 triangle. Now, somebody said, well, Mr. Evans, on this one, we don't have a 1 and a 1. Well, which triangle would give you 1? Well, if I did this one, this is opposite and adjacent, square root of 2 over square root of 2, which would be 1. That's the pi over 4 triangle. So sometimes with some of those, you have to think a little bit through those, okay? All right? All right, so go ahead and try these on your own. Okay? Now, when you have the negative ratio, you got to think a little bit. Okay? So this one would be O over H. Okay? So that is the pi over 3 triangle normally. Now, since I have a negative ratio, okay, I got to think of where sine is negative. Well, sine is negative in quadrant 3 and 4, but I can only use the quadrant 4 amount, which would be 5 pi over 3, or you can just put negative pi over 3. Either answer is acceptable if you don't want to know the conversion. Okay, for cosine, A over H. Well, which triangle would be that? That'd be the pi over 4. Now, where is cosine negative? That's quadrant 2 and 3. I can only use quadrant 2, so that's going to be the 3/4 pi for my answer. Okay, all right, where is that negative square root of 3? So that's O over A. We just did this example, okay, where the O is 1 and the A is 3, and that would create that, which is the pi over 6. Now, since it is a negative, where is tangent negative? Quadrant 2 and 4. I can only use the quad 4 amount, which would be 11 pi over 6, or you can do negative pi over 6, whichever you want. Okay, A over H, Okay, all right, where is that square root of 3? That's going to be pi over 6 as well. Now, since it's negative, that quadrant's 2 or 3, I can only use the 2, so that's going to be 5 pi over 6. Okay, where is tangent negative 1? Well, tangent being 1 would be square root of 2 over 2, which is pi over 4. Now, once again, tangent would be negative in quadrant 4. All right, so what I would do is I can do 7 pi over 4, or if you want to, you can do negative pi over 4, whichever you want to put for an answer. Okay, and I only have to do that because the ratio is negative. If the ratio is positive, the triangle is good as it is. Okay, all right, so go ahead and try those on your own. All right, question number 7. Let's talk about the axis points. Okay, let's talk about the axis points. All right, it's easy if it's sine or cosine. All right, and here's what I mean. So remember our axis points, cosine, sine. Okay, cosine, sine. Let me draw this a little bit better. Hold on. Okay, that'd be cosine, sine. That's 1, 0. This is cosine, sine, which is 0, 1. This is cosine, sine, which is negative 1, 0. And this is cosine, sine, which is 0, negative 1. Now, here's the deal with this. For cosine, I can use 0, I can use pi over 2, and I can use pi. For tangent and sine, I can use 0, I can use pi over 2, and I can do 3 pi over 2. If you want, you could use negative pi. For tangent, you can't use these because we can only use stuff in that quadrant. Okay, so where is the sine function 1? Well, that would be right there. That's easy. That's pi over 2. Where is cosine negative 1? Well, that's right there. That's just going to be pi. Where is tangent 0? Now, this is a little tricky. If you think about it, tangent would be sine over cosine. Well, what in these amounts? Well, if I put 1 over 0 there, that would be undefined. This would be undefined. But 0 over 1 would work to be 0. So that answer is 0. Okay? Where is sine 0? Okay, all right, well, that's going to be at 0. Okay, where is cosine 0? Well, that is going to be a pi over 2. So you just have to look at the axis point. The only one that's a little tricky is tangent. Okay, so go ahead and practice those. All right, now, this is like double composition. Now, what you want to do is you want to do this part first. So O over H. All right, well, where is O square root of 3 and H is 2? Well, that's going to be pi over 3. Well, now I want to find what pi over 3 is. Well, that's easy. That's going to be in quad 1. Okay, all right, pi over 3 would be obviously the pi over 3 triangle. That would be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 1 over 2, which is 1/2. Very easy. Okay, where would cosine this be that? Okay, that would be A over H. So that is going to be the pi over 4 triangle. Okay, so tangent of pi over 4, which is in quadrant 1, that's going to be O over A, square root of 2 over square root of 2, which would just be 1. Where would tangent be that? That would be O over A. That would be the pi over 3 triangle. Okay, so sine of pi over 3. Okay, that would be, the sine is O over H. So that's square root of 3 over 2. Okay? All right? So go ahead and practice a couple simple examples. All right, now what you have to do, once again, you got to watch for the negatives and how they work. So the inside here is O over H. Okay, so that would be that would normally be pi over 3, but since the ratio is negative, that's going to mean it's going to move to quadrant 4, which would be 5 pi over 3. So then what I want to do is find the cosine of 5 pi over 3. All right? Well, if I look at that triangle, that's 1/2. And I already know this is in quadrant number 4, and cosine would be positive in quadrant 4. All right? Tangent of 7 pi over 4. Well, that's in quadrant 4. So the tangent of that and the reference angle would be pi over 4. Okay? So what I would get there, tangent of pi over 4, tangent would be O over A, so square root of 2 over square root of 2, which would be 1. So now I want to find where is the sine inverse going to be 1. Well, that's going to be on an axis point of pi over 2. Because remember, on that axis point, that's 0, 1, cosine, and sine. Okay? All right? Sine of pi over 2. Okay? That's on an axis point. And so what that's going to be is that's going to be 1. Okay? So I got cosine of 1. Well, where is that going to happen? That's on an axis point. That's going to be 0. Okay? All right? Okay, let's go ahead and make this a negative here. Okay? All right, let's say I have that. All right? All right, that would be A over H, okay? Which would be negative square, that would be square root of 4 triangle. Now, this, since it's negative, means I'm in quad 2, so that's 3/4 pi, okay? So now I want to find the tangent of, whoops, I did this wrong, hold on. I wanted to have this with nothing here, okay? All right, so now I want to have the tangent of 3/4 pi, okay? Well, I'm in quadrant 2, tangent would be square root of 2 over square root of 2, which would be 1, and since it's in quadrant 2, that would be negative, okay? All right, so why don't you take some time and practice those. Go through, do the inside ones, all right, do the outside ones. Okay, now let's talk about these. All right, so I'm going to say, Mr. Evans, I don't remember a 5. Okay, so here's what this means. Make a triangle. All right, this same generic triangle, where this is the hypotenuse, the opposite, and the adjacent. This is A over H. So that's 3 and 5. Now what I can do is I can do Pythagorean theorem. 3 squared plus leg squared equals 5 squared. That'd be 9 plus leg squared equals 25. Subtract 9, that's leg squared equals 16. Take the square root of 16, I got a leg of being 4. Okay, so now this is very easy. Okay, now I just want to find the sine of this triangle. Okay, where, all right, the sine would be O over H, which would be 4/5. Okay, so that looks complicated, but it really doesn't. So what this means is draw the triangle. All right, this is hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent. This is 12 over 13. I would do Pythagorean theorem, leg squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. That's going to be leg squared plus 144 equals 169. Okay, subtract 144. That's leg squared equals 25. Take the square root of that. The leg is going to be 5. Okay, now, what do they want me to find? They want me to find tangent. So that's O over A. So that's 12 over 5. And that's how easy, even though that looks complicated. Now, if you have to rationalize it, you got to do that. Okay? All right? But then I think you'll be all right there. All right? So go ahead and try these. Okay? All right? Go ahead and figure out what these are. And so what you have to do, in summary, okay, what you have to do with these inverses, okay, if you have a positive ratio, okay, if you have a positive ratio, you're going to be one of these 3. Okay? All right, very simply. If you have a negative ratio, all right, first you're going to have this, you figure out the positive first. Okay? So you want to figure that out. Okay? Then if you're in using cosine, you're using the quad 2 radian. And if you're in sine or cosine, you're using the quad 4 radian. which you can either write that as it is or pick the negative one, okay? If you're on an axis point, all right, that's okay too, okay? If you're on an axis point, okay, you can use cosine for this one, okay? Okay? And then you can use sine, tangent, sine, tangent, sine, tangent. Okay? All right? You just can't use sine and tangent for that amount over here. In the same breath, you can't use cosine for that amount right there. Okay? So you have to use these prescribed ones. Okay? Inverse takes a little bit of work, but if you go through your formative and practice that, you should be okay.